The last time I spoke to my best friend, we were sitting in a diner sharing a plate of fries like we were still teenagers, and when she said, "It's never going to be like this again, is it?" I just changed the subject. Now I wish I had told her. I knew she was right. The last time I spoke to my best friend, we were sitting across from each other in that booth by the window at Mayfield Diner. It was early spring, that kind of in-between weather where you can't tell if you need a jacket or not. I remember because she had this long beige coat she kept pulling on and off, like she couldn't get comfortable. We hadn't seen each other in almost 3 months. That wasn't normal for us. When we were younger, we talked every day, sometimes without even saying much, just sending each other pictures of dumb things or ranting in voice notes at 1 a.m. And when something big happened, we'd show up, no questions asked. I once drove an hour in traffic just to sit in her car because her mom said something cruel again, and she needed to scream. That's the kind of friendship we had. But lately, everything was just slower, duller. We were both busy. She started a new job with long hours. I was dealing with the fallout of a breakup that knocked the wind out of me more than I expected. We kept saying, we should catch up, but never did. Until she texted me that morning. Just one word, fries? And I dropped everything, got in the car, drove 22 minutes to the diner where we used to split fries after school dances and terrible dates. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting with a coffee in her hands, staring out the window like she was trying to remember something. I slid into the booth and said, "You look like someone in a music video." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're late." I was early in spirit. She laughed at that. We always had that rhythm, gentle teasing, familiar pauses. The waitress brought over our usual without asking, fries, chocolate milkshake, extra salt. We joked that she must have thought we never grew up. We talked about work, about how her new boyfriend was kind, boring, and into spreadsheets. I told her about moving out of the apartment and how quiet it felt at night. We danced around the real things, like we were trying to see if the closeness was still there without touching it too hard. Then she looked at me in this quiet, tired way and said, "It's never going to be like this again, is it?" I remember the exact moment she said it. I had just taken a bite of a fry and was reaching for my napkin. My hand stopped halfway. I looked up at her, and she wasn't smiling. She wasn't joking. Just sitting there, holding the edge of her coffee mug like she was afraid it might fall. And instead of saying anything real, I shrugged. Made a dumb joke about the milkshake being too thin. She didn't push. Just nodded like she expected that. Like she'd already made peace with the fact that whatever we were, it was changing. The rest of the meal was soft, careful. We finished our food, talked a little more. Hugged in the parking lot. "Text me when you get home," she said. I said I would. But I didn't. And that was the last time I saw her. She moved to Seattle not long after. I found out on Instagram.
She didn't tell me.
I didn't ask. It's been almost 2 years now. I still have her contacts saved in my phone. Still sometimes type out messages I never send. And when I think back on that afternoon, the fries, the sunlight on the table, the way she looked at me like she already knew, I realized she was offering me a moment of truth. And I looked away. A few months after she moved, I got an invitation in the mail.
It was a wedding invite.
Her name, printed in gold cursive, next to a man I'd never met. I had to read it twice just to understand what I was looking at. There was no note inside. Just the card, RSVP info, and a little map of some vineyard outside Seattle. I stared at it for a long time. Not because she was getting married. We always knew she'd settle down before me, but because I wasn't expecting to be invited. We hadn't spoken since that day at the diner.
No texts.
No calls. Nothing. But she still sent me an invitation, like we were still part of each other's lives. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to book a flight and show up, hug her and pretend like nothing had changed. Another part of me felt like it wasn't really meant for me, like maybe it was just a formality, a way to check a box.
I didn't RSVP.
I didn't go. 2 weeks later, I saw pictures online. Her in a white dress, standing in a field of lavender. The guy, Eric, I think, smiling like he'd won the lottery. A group photo with her friends. People I didn't recognize. Except for one. Jenna. She and Rachel weren't close back then. She was always kind of in the background, just another friend from college. But in the wedding photos, she was front and center. Maid of honor. Holding Rachel's bouquet. Giving a speech. Something about that got to me. I don't know why it bothered me so much. Maybe because I assumed, without ever saying it out loud, that I'd be the one up there someday. That even if we drifted, there'd still be a place in her life that only I could fill. But the truth was right there in the pictures. She had moved on, built a new version of her life, and I wasn't in it. A few weeks later, I ran into her mom at the grocery store. I was reaching for cereal, and she walked right past me before stopping mid-step.
Oh.
Hey, sweetheart. She hugged me like nothing was weird. I smiled and said, I saw the wedding photos. She looked beautiful. She really did, didn't she? Her mom said. Then, after a pause, she was a little sad you didn't come. That hit harder than I expected. I wanted to ask if Rachel had said anything else. If she was still mad, or if she even cared at all. But I just nodded, said something polite, and walked away. That night, I sat on my bed holding my phone for over an hour. I pulled up our old messages, scrolled through years of inside jokes, voice notes, blurry selfies at diners and gas stations and dorm rooms. Then I typed, I miss you. And I stared at it for so long my screen went dark. But I didn't send it. Because I didn't know if I missed her, or just the version of us that I still hadn't let go of. About 6 months after the wedding, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. It was late, just after 11 p.m. I had been lying in bed scrolling through nonsense, trying to fall asleep without really trying. When I picked up, there was a pause. And then I heard her voice. Hey. I sat up straight. It took me a second to speak. Rachel? She laughed, but it didn't sound happy.
Yeah, sorry.
I wasn't sure you'd answer. I asked if she was okay.
She said she didn't know.
There was another long pause. Then she said, I shouldn't have called.
I'm sorry.
Wait, Rachel. What's going on? More silence. I needed to hear a voice that knew me before, she said. Before all of this.
I didn't know what to say.
Her voice sounded cracked at the edges. Not crying exactly, but close. I asked if she was alone.
No.
He's asleep downstairs. She didn't say his name, but I knew who she meant. Her husband. The guy from the photos. I don't know why I'm telling you this, she said. I'm not even sure you care. I do, I said. Too quickly. Too honestly. She let out a breath. It's not what I thought it'd be. This life. Him. Seattle. It's all fine. But I don't feel like myself anymore. She told me how quiet everything had become. How her job made her feel invisible. How Eric worked late and came home tired and touched her shoulder like she was furniture. How sometimes she stood in the shower for 30 minutes just to feel something. And then she said it. I think I made a mistake. My throat closed. I wanted to reach through the phone and pull her back to that booth at the diner. Back to the version of us that wasn't afraid to say the hard things. But all I could say was, why didn't you tell me? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, because I thought you stopped caring when you didn't come to the wedding. That hit harder than anything else she'd said. I told her the truth. That I didn't know if I was invited as a friend or out of habit. That I didn't want to show up and feel like a stranger at something that used to be ours. She didn't say anything to that. Just breathed slowly. The way she always did when she was trying not to cry. Then, very softly, she said, I miss you. I said it back. This time, I meant it without confusion. We stayed on the phone until almost 2 a.m. We didn't solve anything. We didn't even talk about what would happen next. But that call cracked something open. Over the next few weeks, we started texting again. Short, hesitant messages at first. A picture of her coffee mug. A link to a song we used to scream in the car. A video of her cat knocking over a plant. Then one day she texted. He thinks we're fine. He has no idea.
And I didn't know what to say.
Because I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. Part of me was glad. A few days after that text, she called again. Middle of the afternoon this time. I was standing in line at the pharmacy, half listening to the buzz of people around me, when my phone lit up. I answered immediately. I told him I wanted space, she said, before I could even say hello. I stepped out of line and ducked into my car. You what? Eric. I told him I needed time to think. About everything.
Us.
She sounded flat, like she'd rehearsed the words and now didn't know what to do with the silence afterward. I asked what he said.
He nodded, she said.
Didn't even fight it. Just said okay, and went into the guest room. That was 3 nights ago. We haven't really spoken since. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing. Do you think I'm doing the wrong thing? She asked. And I didn't know how to answer that. Because I wasn't objective. I never had been. But I said what I thought was honest. I think you know what's right for you. You just never had the space to say it out loud. She was quiet again. Then she asked, Can I come see you? The question made my chest tighten. I hadn't seen her in almost 2 years. Not since that day in the diner. Part of me had waited for this without knowing it. But another part felt panicked, like the weight of everything we hadn't said was finally falling at once. Yeah, I said. Of course. She flew in the next weekend. I met her at the airport, and when I saw her walking toward me, suitcase in hand, eyes tired but open, it felt like some piece of time folded in on itself. Like we were 16 again, skipping class and sneaking fries behind the bleachers. We didn't hug right away, just looked at each other. Then she smiled, and I pulled her in. We spent that night drinking wine on my couch. She told me about Seattle, about how it never felt like home. About how her marriage had turned into a quiet agreement to keep pretending. About how she missed laughing without feeling guilty. I listened. I watched her hands as she talked. I noticed the small scar on her wrist from when we tried to open a bottle of wine with a screwdriver in college. I remembered every version of her I'd ever known. And at one point, very gently, she reached over and touched my hand. I think I've always been in love with you, she said. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. But I didn't say it back, either. Because the truth was I didn't know how I felt. Or maybe I did, but I was too scared to admit it. Too scared to touch something that had already been broken once. She slept in my bed that night. We didn't do anything. Just lay there, back to back, in that strange, suspended space between closeness and caution. And when I woke up, she was already awake, sitting by the window. She looked at me and said, I don't know what happens next. And I said, me either. She stayed for 3 days. And then she left, just like that. Back to Seattle. Back to her life. Back to a man who didn't ask where she'd been. We haven't talked much since. Sometimes I see her name light up on my phone and I wait too long to answer, like maybe that moment between us only existed because it wasn't meant to last. But the truth is, I still think about what she said that night, about love, about pretending. And sometimes, when I'm quiet enough, I wonder if she meant it. Or if we were both just trying to go back to something that stopped being real a long time ago. I still sit on the same side of the booth when I go to Mayfield Diner. I don't know why. I guess I just like pretending someone's sitting across from me.